I'll sit here next to Jeff.
All right, well, let's call the meeting to order.
Maybe we should move this table a little closer so we're not yelling across the room, huh?
Yeah. Jeff, you couldn't get if you tried.
I know.
All right, we'll start out with roll call. Battle,
Here?
Benedetto,
Here.
Dye,
Here.
Eater, gone, Mastel, here. Okay. So the first item on the agenda, I think, is incorrect. Approval of minutes. Did we,
I did send
you did send
last
them?
time, the September minutes. I haven't gotten Danae's, request for those 3 other months. And I need to check if we even met those times.
Okay, so I have July on the agenda though, so I messed up.
Why? Oh, 'cause the meetings before.
Yes, so I don't,
Did we do anything?
I can't remember. We did, well, we did convene and we approved the minutes and that's it.
And that's it?
Mhm.
Okay. I
Yeah.
haven't typed that up yet.
Okay, so we will table that for next month, and then also I will add September.
Can we approve September's minutes, or do we want to just
They're not on the
wait
agenda,
until?
so we can't.
Oh, right, okay. Gotcha.
So, I'm a bad agenda writer. My apologies. You're good.
Well,
You're
and I'm a
fine.
late minute sender too.
Yeah, okay, so, then these 4 things, this is what I had from my notes that we were wanted to talk about, so I don't think we're gonna be able to talk about the first thing. So do you remember last month, they, the folks from Beartooth RC&D were saying that we could ask for a visioning exercise for the urban renewal district with Kansas State University? I do remember the discussion.
Yep, that sounded very, promising.
Okay, so do we want to, because I don't know if we could probably make like a consensus, but I just like, well, if you want to do that, I guess we can make a motion and then we could ask them. That's pretty formal. I don't know. We could do a consensus and just say, yes, we're interested.
Yeah.
See what it entails.
Yep,
I mean,
okay.
How long the process is, or,
Yep.
how involved it gets,
Mhm.
type of a thing.
Okay, I'll tell them we're interested and want more details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the cost of that was covered by Beartooth?
Yeah, it sounded like they had a grant,
Okay.
maybe from EPA or something. So maybe that'll be part of the
Maybe
detail.
double check on that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
But I think it'd be a good idea if it all works out. I think that would help.
yeah, yeah.
And it could be done in conjunction with or as an addendum to the growth policy.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay, well,
Both of them together would be good.
good. All right, well, I will tell them that. Okay, great. So that's just like a consensus decision. I don't think it's like not committing us to anything, so I think we're probably good with that. Okay, the next one, and Jeff, I'm not sure if you actually wanted this on the agenda, but I put it on there, so discuss City of Red Lodge growth policy draft.
Well, the reason I asked for that one was I think the Urban Renewal District's gonna be part of that discussion at some point. And Urban Renewal District is actually part of the North End, community entrance area. So I think, and that kind of goes back to what I mentioned a little while ago in terms of a visioning document for a visioning exercise for the Urban Renewal District. That's really what a growth policy is. It identifies what the vision is for the community and what the goals and objectives are for that, and that's would help. Yes, what I see is that visioning exercise would help inform within the growth policy what what the vision would be for the urban renewal district and goals and objectives.
What is the timeline on the growth policy?
Well, the planning board is reviewing that document right now, and I think the timeline for completing the draft is towards the end of this year, first part of January. Is that kind of?
That's right. I don't anticipate a lot of new building and development stuff that'll take attention in that time frame.
You do or you don't?
I don't anticipate, I'm seeing it now, it's not really the construction season per se.
Yeah, so, right now we're discussing the future land use sections, so. But I think the current draft of the document is available online too, so it might be worth, if you have time, it might be worth taking a look at that, and at least the parts that are relevant to the urban renewal, that might be relevant to the urban renewal district.
It is easy to find, but I could also email it out to everybody.
Yeah, if you just go into the news section, isn't it still one of the 4-pin stories?
It's there, but it's still, if you just Google City of Red Lodge, growth plan, it'll come up and you can find the draft as like the first link. Pretty good.
Is there any official statement that we need to make or anything that we need to do as a board?
I can't, at this point, I can't think of anything, but, maybe at some point, maybe you should have the planner talk to this group.
Like present, so, I mean,
At
that
least-
meeting should be.
At least get a little bit better understanding of where how the urban renewal district's gonna be incorporated into that. What do you think, David?
We can do that. I was gonna think, we've got planning board represented here. It seems like didn't we have Cody come and kind of talk to this group about what was and wasn't in URD purview, or there's a lot of these, so I might be mixing up another one, but
I remember her being remote once and just kind of touching on a few different things, but I also missed one of the summer meetings, so she could have come again.
I would think our role would be.
right now, we're focusing, I think, are we doing more on the downtown or the growth policy right now?
Mostly growth policy right now. The downtown master plan was, I think Chad is expecting to have a draft available for the planning board to look at, first part of November, based on the last meeting.
Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think our role is probably to kind of comb through the draft of the growth policy and see if anything just jumps out at us to discuss, maybe, at this stage.
What's that?
At this stage, anyway, just to.
Okay, so we should review it, and I'm assuming that the engineers or whoever's writing it has already reviewed the growth our urban renewal plan to make sure that the proposed growth policy is,
As has the planning board too, so
okay.
I think in line with Jeremy's comments, and I would anticipate that your job, you guys will look through and say, have they failed to take into account is there anything that they're
Right.
overlooking or missing?
So-
If I may, Madam Chair, I had an interesting conversation, and I pulled it up because I was thinking it was, Jeff that had initiated the conversation. It wasn't, it was, Brent. And it had to do with sprinkling systems or buildings with, let me rephrase it, had more to do specifically with buildings which are within the URD that are impacting the city insurance rating at whole. And I remember James talking about that when he first brought this forward. And anyway, part of that conversation was, we've talked about affordable housing and that's a really important thing that that we're trying to do, but at the same time, if you think TIF districts in general, which you're very, very familiar with, I mean, the idea is to promote growth and development. And so if this board was decided that they wanted to go in or help or incentivize some of those companies to put in a sprinkling system, and if it changed the overall insurance rating of the town, the reality is you've made it a better environment that people are going to develop in and increase our tax base, which is, you know, ultimately, the real purpose of it is to improve our taxes so we can pay for things. But it was so much of the conversation has had to do with, you know, affordable housing, and even, I heard somebody say there that you've got the talking about the adjusting the boundary, and if there's a benefit or need and stuff there, but, I looking for a spot to slip that in there. But I think, again, as you're going through the growth policy, we should be looking for opportunities to improve the insurance rating of the town. We should be looking for making sure we have an environment that's conducive to new businesses coming in, or spreading out the diversity, or whatever that. And some of that may be stuff that just comes into play. I think it's more that the growth policy will drive how you choose to make recommendations based on the URD than the other way around. I don't think it'll be you guys driving the growth policy. I think it'll be looking at the growth policy to see if that is something for you to justify as you're using URD dollars. The chicken egg scenario.
Was the idea with the sprinkler thing, like you'd have a building in the vicinity that didn't have a sprinkler system, but upgrading it to a sprinkler system would increase the safety and therefore insurance rating? Is that
well, the insurance rating of the town as a whole.
Right.
So you're allowed X number of buildings. So the two buildings that were identified in that response were the lumberyard, the building, not the yard, interestingly enough, because it was the square footage of the building.
Okay.
And the pea cannery.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question, and where it really kind of extends out to is, okay, so one of the districts that came up uses, I don't know if it's Missoula or Bozeman, will pay 40% of the cost of putting the sprinkling system into one of those systems. But in my mind, it's if it meets the objectives of the URD, which is, you know, we have more development, we have, you know, we're improving the taxability. So I think that's the thought process that you follow through to see if that's something that the group wants to look at or at recommending or not. But I don't think we have enough information on that to make but I reached out to Tom and kind of pursued, because Jody, who was insurance for 24 years, going, this doesn't pass the smell test. And I think it was just, there wasn't enough information in those emails as we went back and forth. So I've been educating myself a little bit on it today, and that's my takeaway from it, is that if you have X number of buildings over certain, then you have to have this number of fire trucks, and if you don't, then your rating is impacted. It's got a lot of moving parts to it. That was a long way from growth policy, sorry.
Well, I think what the growth policy is gonna, what the current growth policy talks about, at least for the north entrance, is a mix of commercial and residential. So it's kind of multi-use buildings. Some of the things that are currently within the urban renewal district in terms of goals and objectives. So it's just kind of maybe making sure that the two documents are in sync.
Yeah.
But Dave was right, the overarching document is gonna be the growth policy, and the urban renewal district is a subset of, just like the parks plan and parks and trails plan, and it's some of the other documents that are, they're appendices to the growth policy.
Okay, so then I will keep that on the agenda for November. And then, do we want to have a speaker? Do we want to have somebody talk about it? I mean, we're supposed to meet November 11th, which is a holiday, as today is, right? So we can two things, we can move the date, or do we want to have somebody talk to us about the growth policy? At a minimum, it sounds like we should have a discussion, just like have a.
You guys should look at the growth policy
Yeah.
and say, this is what I learned from looking at the growth policy that we ought to be considering for URD,
Mhm.
and, or this is something that I feel should be in the growth policy
Mhm.
that isn't.
Do we want to have a speaker, somebody from the engineer, it's like, somebody, well, you are the planning board person, you
You
are
are
the
the
planning board person.
Okay, here's,
Well, I think, maybe as an assignment, we kind of take a look at what is in the draft right now
Okay. Mhm.
and see what, how that might affect, or be related to the urban renewal
Yep.
district. And then if there's questions, then we can probably, address those questions to
Okay,
the contract planner.
okay, sounds good, okay. Okay, anything else on the growth policy draft?
just looking at it real quick, there is a section that talks about the urban renewal plan,
Oh, perfect,
and so we can just make sure that that summary is accurate and
okay,
well-placed. And, yeah, just comb through it and see.
okay,
So the current growth policy, as an example, the active transportation plan and the parks plan, the growth policy has sections that deal with each of those,
mhm,
but then they reference the active transportation plan and the parks plan. Those are the implementation documents, just like I would think this
mhm,
urban renewal district plan would be
okay,
the implementation document that implements the goals and objectives of the growth policy as it relates to workforce housing and how development proceeds in the entrance zones.
okay. All right, well, we will,
I guess my main point of having that on the agenda was just making everybody aware of
mhm,
that process is going on right now.
great. Very good.
The plan isn't in the appendices yet, but maybe it should be.
What's that?
The urban renewal plan isn't in the appendices yet, at least on this draft. Maybe it should be, or it will be
Well,
added eventually.
Yeah, 'cause the urban renewal district was in existence when the growth policy was, 2020 growth policy was developed.
Okay.
All right, okay, so if we don't, nothing else on the growth policy, we'll move on to the next thing. So again, this was in my notes, and we had talked about it a couple times, so I thought I'd just put it on the agenda. If we do want to expand the boundary of the Red Lodge Urban Renewal District to include the parcels on top of Brewery Hill, I guess, yeah.
I can offer two things. So the question was, so the city is in the process, we've just formally done, an intention to investigate a land trade or something or other. So the land, as you go up Brewery Hill on the left, is mostly city land. It's actually currently part of the airport, but we're pruning it out of there. In the middle of it, there is a half-acre lot that's 50 by 50 that was adjacent to the old road when the old road came out lower on the hill. That is currently owned by O'Neill, and we are looking at a land swap. He has an interest in a triangle piece that's a little bit bigger, but it also has the buildable portion of that lot and the buildable portion of the other lot are equivalent. So we're looking at doing a land swap, so that the city's parcel there is uninhibited, and the thought was that that's advantageous if we were looking at like Section 42 housing or something, that we want to make that available too. And so a couple of things, and I'll look to Jeremy to correct me if I misspeak, but my understanding is if that development happens, it's a tax-free property, so it doesn't actually increase the value of the URD. So the advantage of whether we wanted to include it in is if we foresaw the possibility that we may want to use some URD dollars to help incentivize somebody to build the type of housing in there that we'd like them to build. Whether that be, we're gonna pay for their hookup fees, or we're gonna do, you know, somebody comes in and says, well, if, as city land, we just won't lease it to somebody unless they do that. So we already have a pretty big hammer in the conversation. So we still have some leverage, even if it's not part of the URD, but what we couldn't do is use any URD dollars. So let's suppose they want to do a survey, so that they need to do a survey, to say this is the land. There has to be a survey completed before they're done with that. That's something that would normally look to the city to do. We want to be able to use URD dollars for that. So that would be the reason that I would say we may want to consider doing that. The second thing that interestingly enough has come up is there's some land along 212, northbound on the east side of the road. There was a recent, so the old railroad that was there was an easement, and the city owned that, and so that, anyway, let me rephrase it. So the land right here along is the easement, and it's currently in city boundaries.
Just the easement?
Pardon?
Just the easement part?
Well, yeah, just the easement is part of city boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
The adjacent landowner went to court and has a judicial ruling that says, nope, that easement is split up and it goes to the adjacent property owners. Now, interestingly enough, the battle was not between the city or not the city, it was between two landowners. Well, mine touches it from this side, mine touches it from this side. So a judge basically said, this is now part of your property, this is now part of your property. Which means they have a big piece of property, part of which is in the county, part of which is in the city. There's two or three things that could go future in the, so that's not a problem. There's all sorts of farms that are in two different counties, and they just figure out how much this district is counting, how much of that district is counting. But there was a question and a concern about, A, does the URD impact them at all? And I think they have a misunderstanding, because the URD doesn't force anybody's hands to do anything. It just means there's a mechanism available if you want to use it for funding. If they ended up building back here, they wouldn't be building according to city codes. If they end up building on the front little part, then city code would come into play. So part of it is, and I need to go out and have a chat with the guy who's selling it, I think, and find out what his intention is. Because we've also looked at, it's off here, 2 Mile Bridge has city sewer currently. So that's one of those areas, and they've already signed, as part of getting those sewer services, it's there, it's also in Remington Ranch. They've already signed the waiver to push back if we were to annex them. So again, that's additional tax dollars and increase the tax thing. And we're already providing the city services, but now we have to do streets, and our police are already going through there, so why aren't we collecting the taxes? But suddenly you have city, this becomes a question for annexation. So what I want to do is find out is, are you interested in becoming part of the city and having access to city services? Because we won't do city services unless they're annexed. Or do you want to be in the county? In which case they could petition for an adjustment to the property and the boundary. And if it's no longer in the city, then it will also no longer be part of the URD. So that would probably be just a formality that would need to be taking place at that point.
So if they're that close to city services, aren't they required to hook up to?
If they were in the city.
No, even if they're adjacent to it and they go through subdivision. I thought there's a requirement that if you're adjacent to a city and within 500 feet of city services, you have to connect to the city services. You can't do a septic system or a well.
That would be the county to impose that. Our rule that we have said about you have to be, and I want to say it's 300 feet, we can only enforce on within city limits. We have zero, as you know from the conversation with the future land use planning map. So we don't.
But what would be the benefit to the city to allow a development on its borders and then at some point come into annexing and that development not adhere to any of the city zoning regulations or anything else, but they get to hook up to city services?
at that point in time, yeah, so now we're going, so why would we allow it? A, we don't have any choice but to. It's like, why do I allow you to go buy car X? It's like, I have no say over that, that's yours.
I guess I disagree with that.
Okay?
The city should have some power or some influence into an adjacent landowner that wants to hook into city services,
If they want to hook into city services,
but they don't.
then we make them sign a waiver to not fight if we annex them.
And I guess I'm asking the question, if that was to be a large development, they're gonna have to address sewer, and they're gonna have to address water.
Agreed.
And how are they gonna address that?
I don't know the answer yet. So,
At some point, my point is, at some point, the way that can only legally be addressed is to connect into city services. Otherwise, if you look at, you know, the potential of a large development with a whole series of septic systems bordering Rock Creek, from an environmental standpoint, doesn't make any sense at all when you've got a sewer system that's in place.
well, it's very likely the county says, we're not gonna allow you to do that subdivision, and we're not gonna approve that, consider we're talking. So, you said an interesting thing earlier, because you said we should have the power, and then you said that the persuasion or the influence, and right now, when it's not us, that is the extent of our power, is persuading, you know, that's it. But that's why I want to talk to them and say, what is your intent? Do you want to develop that in the county, and you're taking care of your own water, you're taking care of your own sewer, and you're never going to be part of the city? In which case, abandon that. Or do you want to be, in which case we should be looking at annexing that, and then having those conversations about what are the costs to tie in and expand our system as necessary to do that. So I need to go, and my understanding is that conversations be with the person who's interested in selling the lots, not the person who's buying it, which is, I don't know if they're selling the subdivision, I don't know, that's conversations I haven't had yet. It's kind of come up, and it's that urban boundary, tying it into here again, because we're talking about, do we want to include this triangle right here, because here's the old road, now the road comes right here. So this is the triangle, do we want to include that, which we can do, because it's right across the street from Alpine. So it's adjacent, but then, just throwing in, there may be a discussion that happens up here. It doesn't have to happen all at the same time either. It would have to be an ordinance, it would be ultimately council's discretion, and it would require 2 readings. But it would be the recommendation of this group about, we think you ought to annex that because we'd want to be able to throw some money at it so that people would be inclined to do what there's things that may come up that we want to be able to use the URD dollars to do.
There's also discussions about utilizing that old railroad right-of-way as a bike and pedestrian.
The old railroad right-of-way no longer exists by decree. So, by way of information, a judge says it no longer exists.
So does that, so we can't bisect parcels of land, does that have any?
No, you can, like I said, it's just,
Not with
we
the
get
URD.
to tax this strip, they get to tax that strip,
But
sort
we
of.
can't have a portion of a parcel in the URD, it's gotta be the entire parcel.
That's why we
I
amended.
know, what I'm saying is if it's not part of the, we can't have a parcel in the URD that's not part of the city. So if it gets pruned out of the, if it gets pruned out of the city, it follows that it would need to be taken out of the URD as well.
But we also amended the URD boundary the first time because it bisected a city parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it does need to follow parcel line.
Yeah, you
At least
can't-
that was our
you can't
impression
have
when we.
partial, you gotta have full parcel.
At least in terms
I
of
think
the
my
URD.
understanding is that was a specific individual that was protesting and saying they didn't want to be part of it, and so they took all of it
No,
out.
it bisected a parcel, and you can't do that. You have, the whole parcel is in, or the whole parcel is out.
Was that probably for tax purposes?
That's,
If it's like
URD
yeah,
basics,
okay.
that's a URD rule. You cannot,
Yeah, I
you
think,
have to have the
I
entire
would think
parcel.
it's, you're either doing the increment for the whole parcel and not half the parcel. I think that could change with, like I said, because I know it can be taxed by 2 different entities. 'Cause that was my first thing.
that's
if you
true,
can't-
but in terms of the URD, I don't think we can
No, you have,
Yeah.
split it,
it's either in or out.
Okay.
and that's just. the
And I
definition.
wasn't party when you guys did that. I'm aware that it happened, but
Yeah,
It must have been, I think it was a mistake in the boundary.
It was
Yeah.
just an accidental,
It was
like,
just
whoops,
somebody
we
drew a
drew it.
nice line, and it
Yeah.
looked pretty, and
Yeah.
then somebody said, there's a problem.
If you zoom in, yeah.
Well, and I remember talking with the landowner and we asked them, if, do
Mhm.
you want the whole thing in, or
Mhm.
do you want it left out?
Yep.
And that was their choice.
And they said, no, thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that
So
was my
their choice.
recollection.
Yep.
Okay.
The answer, so like I said, if you guys wanna talk about the merits of that or the whys, this,
Well-
I think, is just an awareness.
So I kind of want to put this issue to bed because we have talked about it now at like 3 or 4 different meetings, and we don't have any answers. Every time we have the same exact conversation, and I don't like doing that.
Okay.
So we need to have
You guys
somebody,
just need to make a recommendation, yea or nay.
somebody needs to tell us what the rules are. Like, we don't know, so with the expanding of the boundary, that piece sounds like we're actually waiting until the city does the land swap. If that goes through, no.
No dependency. There are things that can happen in parallel.
Well, it would, I guess our
There
question,
would just be 2 properties in the URD,
Right.
and that would become 1 property in the URD if the land swap
Oh,
was complete.
okay. Well, to me, the other question is there a benefit? Because it's possible that we go through all this effort and there actually is no benefit to having that parcel in. Like, I feel like we need to just make sure that if there's a housing low-income tax credit, whatever that is, development, like, is that allowable? Because there could be potentially not allowable. Is there any benefit at all? Like, I want to make sure that we know that, because I can see that being out of left field. Probably not, but I'm not qualified to answer that question.
Mhm. We had a discussion at a work session at school board the other day, and it was with Brad with, workforce housing, forgot his
Oh, yeah,
last name.
yeah.
But yeah, from Community Foundation, and it's fabulous. But anyway, we spent a lot of time on that parcel of land, and he was fairly certain that the next project bringing into the community would probably take place there, most likely, just because it's a viable piece of property and the planning and structure, and we were looking at it for teacher housing, and how to do that. So
Cool.
it's talked about for sure, so I think it's a viable piece.
Okay.
And I don't know whether it's, I don't know, I don't see the benefit of having it included, but I'm also not the most educated one to ask.
Well, yeah, I think we need somebody to, I mean, I can see how if we included it, then so that's the thing, can we modify the boundaries? That's when, we don't know that for sure. Can we modify the boundaries to include a project? You might not be able to do that.
There is no project yet, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about decisions in a crystal ball. There really isn't.
Well, there's a project on the table, I mean, it's not on the
There's a
table.
conversation that's
There's a
happening. The last
conversation.
email I got is not interested, not moving forward. Having said that, I saw him today, and we had a revisit of what that really means or doesn't mean. There were 2 questions that I recall as this came up the first time. Is there a benefit to the URD? And I think it was Jeremy who clarified, no, because those properties are not taxable, so it wouldn't benefit the URD. So the question is, does the URD, is that something that the URD would be interested in spending dollars to say, we'll pay $5,000 to do a land survey so that the city can then lease it out? Or, no, the city has to figure out where that $5,000 is going to come out of the general budget. That's basically the hammer or the discussion point, I think, here.
yeah, like, my thought is, if it follows the logic of, the URD's narrative and it's contiguous with the URD, I think it's worth making an amendment to include, that in the logic. It doesn't have to be because this project, we want this. I don't think that is the.
Yeah, and by the way, Alpine was known and dug in the dirt, and I mean, they had stakes and everything when that happened, so that was not a disqualifying factor with Alpine.
Right.
But they did that because it would benefit the URD.
Oh, yeah, no, yes.
I guess my question there is is one of the thoughts of the URD is the increase in tax increment.
And this wouldn't.
Would help increase the funds available through the URD for future development. In this case, there would be no additional funds from the development. So it'd be like, we bring it in and
There might be.
and we expend URD dollars, but
It depends on the project, like if they
If
put,
it turned into a gas station or a.
well, yeah, but if they did some kind of mixed use where part of it is taxable, you know, that case, but.
But I guess if the city owns the parcel, there wouldn't be any tax levied against that.
Well, the improvements would be recorded in some manner, and those could be
Those-
taxable.
And those would be taxed,
Yeah.
so,
So even if it's on
So the
city
bowling
property.
alley casino, I'm sorry, the family center is on city-owned land. They lease it, but the improvements are taxable.
Yeah. So there's scenarios, I guess.
Okay, so the question, I couldn't follow to me, there's a question of, can we move the boundaries?
Of the URD.
Yes, because I
Okay?
think we can,
We've
but,
been told we can when we've asked explicitly.
okay.
The question is, do you guys see a benefit either in potential increased tax revenue, which would not be the case if the project that went in there was affordable housing, or in the ability to help clear the hurdles of affordable housing, which then makes it a recipient of the URD rather than a funder of the URD?
Right.
Unless it's a mixed-use case.
Yeah, so the question, it seems like there's three questions. Can we move the boundaries? Is there a benefit to the housing project to be in the URD? Probably yes, but is there a benefit to the URD for having the housing? Probably not. But I don't know, it seems like
I think
know
it's
those
just
by
one, is it
somebody
something
that
you
has-
guys want to do, and then we hand it off to the planner and say, tell us how to do this and make it happen. And then,
Okay,
Yeah, the logic I would follow, if we were to recommend the amendment, would be, one of the goals of the URD is to provide workforce housing. This is an ideal location for that workforce housing.
yes,
And if it were within the boundary, it could be the recipient of those
I
funds.
follow that.
Therefore, let's make the amendment. So I feel like that could be
Yeah,
done with a fairly straight face and not run into many
you
questions.
so move.
I mean, what do you guys think?
I think we need to
I-
find some
Like, is it
answers.
premature?
We just-
It seems like it.
We're just having the same conversation over and over.
Circling,
I
yeah.
don't like that.
So what do we need to do to make it not be the same conversation, Tara?
I think we need to look at what some other communities have done in terms of how they've modified it and utilized the URD to accommodate workforce housing. I think us just sitting here, I agree, and just kind of talking about it isn't getting us anywhere.
No.
And I don't feel like we have enough experience dealing with URDs to make a decision without having some expert advice to help advise us, whether it be the planner
Yeah.
who's had experience in dealing with URDs, or somebody that's got some better background and more background than we do in dealing with, and how you administer and, because that, I kind of feel like we're being asked to commit to a financial outlay
Right.
without really understanding the conflicts and, or the potential pitfalls that we might be getting into. So on one hand, yeah, the city could use general fund dollars to do the survey,
Yeah.
but, or use URD funds, but is that really the best use of URD funds if we're thinking down the road in terms of the entire URD and where we want to go with how that's developed? This is just one facet of it, just one piece of it. I think we need to have a little bit better understanding of the pros and cons before we make a decision.
What I think, and I guess what I was looking is it something of interest, in which case then I'll have a staff report drawn up, because when it came to spending those dollars, we aren't making any commitments. You guys would ultimately say, we make the recommendation to do this, and ultimately council would have to approve that. But I think what I'm hearing is, let's get a staff report that'll either recommend or not the merits of including the land at the tip of Brewery Hill within the URD. Is that a?
Okay, I think that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I'm not opposed to it, it's just
No, not at all.
trying to sit
like,
here
we're kind of in
talking
the dark,
about
like,
this
Well,
stuff
it's
without
a big
having
whirlpool
any
of, like,
background
information and.
knowledge
yeah.
or information, and it, you know, it could end up being a pretty significant,
or it could be like, you can't build there, or, like, I mean, there could be other problems with that parcel, we don't know.
Is it fair to, I've added, their sentiment is yes, if it makes sense.
If it's buildable, yeah.
I think that's a whole nother question, but,
well, I think it's consistent with the URD's goals and objectives. I
Right.
think them
I mean,
not
that.
just short-term, but long-term as well.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so you have that,
I have that as an action item.
okay, so
I
we
feel like
have,
there's an open question too of whether areas that are added to a TIF district have to meet the definition of blight. Like, do we have to
oh,
make that case for that parcel that's being
It's
added?
undeveloped, I think it counts as blight.
Does
But by the way,
undeveloped count as blight? I don't know.
well, that's,
I don't know
we
that
have
it
an
does.
awful lot of undeveloped that's included in it, all of that stuff along the freeway, that
It
right
is
of way
included in it,
but
but
you
it's,
don't have, every single thing doesn't have to be considered blight to be included in
Yeah,
this.
and then
Right.
a couple of things, two warnings. The state is reconsidering, the legislature's gonna be taking up and redefining blight this year. So they will tell us what blight is and is not. There is, Sarah, you'll probably know, is it Senator Hertz? Does that name ring a bell? We have one legislature who's doing what he can to abolish and eliminate TIFs
entirely,
together with
yeah.
him.
I will tell you that the Montana Economic Developers Association, they are like red alert. Like, they are convinced that the
there's-
legislature is gonna do, it's,
The league has a full-on,
in the league too, yeah.
has a full-on, because it's considered to be very limiting.
Well, they think, it sounds like from me sitting through, well, kind of one for sure, when the media was here, they think that it doesn't, like, the properties would develop anyways. They think that it's a windfall for the property owners. I was actually thinking of wondering if you guys would be okay with seeing if we could get a speaker to just to zoom in and talk to us a little bit about, because we're so new, I don't know that we can do anything, but we might be able to do something to help with the cause, I don't know. I think we could talk to our legislator. But he was here, and he seemed like he was in favor. I don't know.
Of the tip?
There's, like I said, my understanding is it's one particular, senator who carries apparently a whole bunch of weight, and his operating assumption is that municipal governments, take money and spend it and don't have accountability and don't spend it. That's just, that there isn't anything that municipal governments are doing with the money to justify them collecting taxes and paying on it. And so it's just kind of inhibiting that. There were, at the conference, there were like 6 or 7 different bills that came up, and he was the primary sponsor on all of them. Interesting.
Yeah, I listened in on last sessions too, and that name came up a lot. They shot it down, most of the ones that he proposed, but
Interesting.
they're on the table.
Interesting.
They're in the hopper right now with 7,000 other bills.
Right.
Okay, do we have anything else? You have the work order in place, so, or whatever you called it.
The
so-
direction.
So we
Work order.
expand the boundaries of Red Lodge Urban Renewal District to include additional parts. So so then that will be old business, right, for next, you think they could do it
See, now
by?
you're playing my game. You're using this agenda to write the next agenda.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm
Gotta do it sometime.
doing a really bad job at agenda,
No,
so
you're
I'm trying to up my game here. So, okay, so then I guess you'll have to let me know if we'll put it on the agenda for November. If they can't do it, we'll just move it to
I'll add that to
December.
the note that we'd like him to make a recommendation, by, for November, 11.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, I have no preference one way or the other. The task I've been given is to make sure the process works and that we're following the rules and doing it. So I don't know. We were pursuing this without it. But we were pursuing the the trail down Brewery Hill without it, before somebody said, hey, why are you using it for this? This is why it was set up for. It's like, oh. So I would put it actually in exactly that same conversation, other than the boundary doesn't already exist, so.
Okay, so that, I think we're good on that, and so I'll move that to old business for next month. Anything else on that before we move on? Okay, so this is also very old business that we keep talking about every time.
Mhm.
But, discuss vacant positions on the agency board. So, okay, so we've asked, and it sounds like the city doesn't want to outlay any more money to advertise for the board position. So I was thinking we should put a plan together amongst the four of us and Joanne. And maybe we do this in January when, because like, people are maybe not looking for new opportunities right now, but maybe in January, people will be like, oh, you know, I think I need to do something. I need to be a volunteer.
We
on
had
something."
interested people who came to meetings that would, designate an interest and
Oh,
be part of the conversation.
we didn't know what we were coming to.
Well, there we go.
But you're correct. The city's thing is, we ran the ad multiple times. We paid the cost. We put it on the city website and got no results. So where we left it was, when you guys tell us you have interested people who will submit, we will formalize it so that the process is done correctly.
Okay, do we want to do that now? Do we want to do it in January? What do you guys think?
Do we want to do it only if you have two positions so that you maintain an odd number, go from 5 to 7?
I don't care if it's an even number personally.
No, I don't either. You'll duke it out.
Right, right. If something's 3-3, then we can just talk about it longer.
Yeah,
And there's a reason it's 3-3.
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know Joanne was twisting an arm or two,
Oh.
and I don't know how far she's gotten, but.
I have one person who's actively expressed interest,
Oh.
but she's about to have a kid, so that might,
Oh.
So you're leaning toward January, is that what you're saying?
yeah, that might be better, I don't know.
We'll take the direction when you say, please run it again. But if we get no response, there'll be a hesitation, and they'll say, why are we doing this without
Direction.
a likelihood of success?
Mhm.
I'm also fine leaving it as a standing item
Otherwise, Senator
until
Hertz will
we
send a
find
letter
some
and ask why I keep running an ad,
candidates.
Oh.
but our board is fine with 5.
Yeah, we're squeaking by. I guess I'm always just worried, like, oh my gosh, there's gonna be a time when nobody can show up. Well,
If we're having trouble filling those, what was our rationale for increasing it to 7?
An odd number?
It's the odd number.
Well, just having
You've got 5, it was just to have more people.
more
in case-
points of view.
And in case people couldn't be here, but in fairness, this is an advisory board. Very seldom, I think, is there something that's gonna get held up if there hadn't been 3 of you that have been able to show up tonight. What have we done tonight that would have been earth-stopping if we had ended up picking it up next week or 2 weeks down the road?
We didn't have a motion, so we didn't need a quorum, right?
Yeah.
The only reason.
okay, so maybe it's not,
But it'd be nice, I agree, Jeremy, it'd be nice to have more input,
yeah.
have more voices, more direction.
I mean, because there's gonna come a day when all eyes are on us. I mean, there will,
Yeah.
there will be a day,
Mhm.
and it will be, nice to have more people than just us.
My sense from the previous conversation was there was really anticipation of losing somebody.
Right.
Oh, well,
It
that
was-
too, yeah.
If there's 5 and it jumps down to 4
Mm-hmm.
or 3, that's a problem. Well, and I think it's supposed to be 5 at the minimum, isn't it? I'd have to pull it up, but it seems like when we look at it, it's 5 to 7, so.
Yeah. So running at a minimum is not ideal.
No, and that's, yeah. Well, maybe at our January meeting, we should talk about this again, because if Joanne's here and she's got somebody and you have somebody,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should have that down as a proposal. And then we can talk about it at our January meeting, and then we can ask the city at that time to run an ad, and then we can, put something on Red Lodge Buzz or something, I don't know.
It runs in the paper and goes online. So I'm just putting an additional advertisement for an opening anticipated in January timeframe.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Mhm.
That's not an action item yet, that's just letting me know that I won't be surprised when it shows up.
Mhm. Okay, great, that's great, awesome. Okay. Treasurer's report.
There's nothing new since last time. Happy to go over what I said last time, but otherwise, that's fine.
Okay, any written correspondence, petitions, communications from the audience?
Any comments?
We have an audience.
We have an audience,
Yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah.
Dave took care of that.
I had a thought on, because the other thing, and I'm sorry, Tamara, this goes, kind of go back to that additional URD thing. Does it make any difference if there's a hard and fast rule that we're not gonna put out any money until there's 300,000? That's been up to a conversation, and my question is, we wanna change it so that in order to do something prior to that point, it requires a super majority of somehow. So it's like, that way, because we were kind of wondering, how do you do it so that if the perfect project falls in your lap, you don't have the ability to not do it, like the trail came
Like
up.
the trail, yeah.
And so they ended up doing that, but there wasn't really, it was more of a guideline, really.
Mhm.
But I think the logic was good of, let's not spend it all so we don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
But as you guys are revisiting the rules or how you do it, you know, once we have 300,000, it requires a majority. If before that, it requires unanimous or a supermajority or something before you do it. Just a thought is,
An option.
Mm-hmm. I think we were pretty unanimous with the trail.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think there was anybody that was,
I wanted to give them more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
but I like that idea, I like that, just continuity and,
in retrospect, I will tell you that I think the amount that the URD provided was the good amount because it forced the donors to come up with the other half,
Yeah.
so.
So maybe we can, well, I mean, if we have more people, I think if there's 5 people and you have a supermajority, like,
4 of 5,
Four
I
or
don't know,
five.
it's your rules, you can do it whatever you want to do.
yeah. Okay, well,
I just see that we're not gonna do anything until we get 300,000, well, unless
Yeah.
it's really cool.
and then that.
define
we did.
cool.
Yeah.
Really cool with an asterisk and then a
Yeah,
whole
really.
appendix of.
And
Yeah.
ultimately, that's just a recommendation, right, because it's gonna go
It
to
is.
the council.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But don't we have, I guess, don't we have an application process
Mhm.
so that what we'll have in front of us is really a well-developed
Mhm.
project
Yeah.
to evaluate? I think the difference with the trail, that was kind of, I mean, it was kind of presented to us in that, which was fine, but I wouldn't see every project coming to us with,
It was a simple project, it wasn't as complex as some
Right.
projects.
And it was literally in the plan as an example of an important project to do.
yeah, I think, you know, maybe that's part of it is kind of educating folks in terms of what our application process is and what some of the, reminding them what the requirements are.
I hate to step into it, but, you know, we moved here from Billings, and I worked with the downtown TIF in Billings. You're gonna be on this board.
Well, this just got a whole lot more interesting.
Well, no, and it, I
Well,
guess,
you raise your hand and
you have to
you're
look
stepping
at, I
into it.
guess, return on investment, and $300,000, if that's what your ultimate goal is a big chunk of change, but you, in the meantime, you could overlook, there may be somebody on Broadway that needs $20,000 more to add like $150,000 to the valuation of their building. And so, you know, you're gonna get a return on that $20,000 because the tax increment from that building is gonna go up. And I think that's kind of how Billings downtown TIF has always looked at it. Yeah, the big projects are great if you can take that 300 and get a lot more out of it, but there's a lot of opportunity for smaller projects which might revitalize, you know, like the town square area that's needed revitalization for a few years.
Have you looked at it recently?
It's gotten some, and the parking lot's a big plus, but the overall structure is, you know, lipstick on a pig, yeah, just to throw that out there, because it was poorly built in the first place. And, you know, that's just, you know, one example, and there's always a few of those examples around town that, I mean, gosh, if you look at Broadway looks awesome from the front, but if you go down the alleys on both sides.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just, those are, a lot of those buildings are, you know, they're, lack of a better term, they're decrepit. You know, they're not in great condition, and nobody's putting money back into them, and mostly because a lot of businesses can't afford a lot of money out of their own pocket to do it, but every dime you put into that, you're gonna get more back in tax revenue. So,
Well, so what we had, our discussion, and I think it wasn't just a discussion, and I do think there's value in the discussion, so it's like not always the journey, like, as, you know, that was a kind of a consensus discussion. Well, I think there probably was a motion, but it was that we weren't gonna spend any money until we got a minimum of $300,000 in the kitty.
right, then you can parcel that out, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we have had 2 applications, so there's not flooding in.
Yeah, well, I think part of it's an awareness issue too.
Yes.
You know, so.
But the planner makes people aware of that based on whether it meets the need and the guide and knowing what the funds are.
Mhm.
And I think that the reason for the 300,000 was just, if there's something that comes along that would require a substantial increase, and it's one of those projects that you're talking about, that, hey, we'll get our money back in a year or two, we want to make sure we have the money on hand to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
That's a really cool perspective, like, that perspective has not been shared yet. That's
Yeah.
a really.
And that's what I was talking about, like the watering, you know, the sprinkling system. Does that mean other people will build because they can get insurance and it's cheaper and then we have more? I mean, that's the real idea of a tax increment, is let's increase the tax
Well,
increment.
and I guess one of the things that they've done in the downtown buildings is it's a kind of a having a skin in the game thing. You're not gonna give somebody a whole pile of money if they don't have much of their own money already in it. But, you know, like the brewery is an example. You know, he's revitalizing a building that's important to the community. And if he needed some help to do that, you know, that's gonna bring the value of that building
You're
up.
talking about the cannery?
Yeah, the cannery, well, the brewery, it's both. Depends on your era.
Did you drink fermented peas? No.
It was brewery first, but, you know, anyway, that's a project that's gonna increase, you know, the tax revenue for the community substantially when it's completed.
Trying, oh my gosh, that's gonna be amazing. Yeah, he hasn't come to us for anything.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
We toured it, like, he knows who we
How
are,
many
like,
people went toward that? Because I thought,
25?
That was a good, yeah,
How many?
over 20.
okay, but this board did go, because somebody reached out and he
Yeah.
had met with him and he hadn't mentioned that he'd met with anybody from the city. And I said, I'm pretty sure the URD went down there, because I remember the rainy and the umbrellas and then the next sort of.
Yeah, but we didn't like,
We weren't
hi.
wearing our hats
No, we
in
did
that
not
kind of
have
way,
name
you
tags.
know.
We were just like really excited citizens to be like, wow, this is cool. I mean,
Right.
Joanne connected with them, so
Mhm.
she.
And there were
probably-
people from the foundation who were talking
Mhm.
about historical building funds and various things, so like,
And that type of investment's a magnet.
mhm.
Did people see, you know, other people that are investors see things like that happening, going, well, wow, this is great.
It's
I could run an ad next week, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
pretty spectacular in there, or, you know, it will be, yeah. I think you need to be in the board.
Do you reside within the city by
I'm just
chance?
gonna
That is-
say,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
are you,
Right.
Well then,
are you interested?
I'd be interested.
See, there you go.
yay.
Better run your ads.
Okay, let's move
You
that
have
to,
to advertise for.
Yes.
I do.
okay, we're gonna move that up to
have to do it all legally,
Now.
we can't just slide you in.
Yeah, that's fine. I know there's an application too, but.
No, we just run an ad, you say you're interested.
Letter of
No.
interest,
No, like an email? I think I did an email.
Yeah.
I would be interested in serving.
Pretty much, that was about it.
Cool, oh my gosh. Okay, well, maybe we should run, if you can do the ad in, like, in the next,
Pay attention.
whatever, and then I can put something on Red Lodge Bus.
Yeah, if we have a likely that there's one, there's no harm in trying to get the
No,
second
be
one in there,
awesome,
but,
yeah.
but you're on that, so.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
Joanne has,
She has
Yeah,
somebody
a
she
name.
has a name, for
Yeah.
sure.
and you had one. so
Okay.
maybe-
Might be what it takes.
Okay, that's exciting. Can you tell me when you do that, and then I can coordinate with the board members so that we can,
Sure.
like, put the word out to our network?
Do we want to wait until Joanna's not on the ship?
They get back the 24th.
Nice cruise.
Well, how does that work? Do you have, like, deadlines, or we would need, I don't know how that
Yeah,
works.
it's a deadline, it'll be like, it has to be turned in by Friday, 2 weeks from now, sort of.
Can you have it, let's see, can you have it
I
be
just wait
like
2 weeks to
November
run
first?
it.
Because then we could welcome the new people at our November meeting, which would be the 11th, or, yeah.
Have present to council and get them
When,
accepted,
when-
so it's appointment by mayor with consent of council,
when is the council meeting in November?
second and fourth Tuesdays.
yeah,
Okay.
might not be able to do.
Again, the timing is not critical here, this is not a rocket booster, we can fill out the board and make decisions.
Well, and,
Could shoot for December,
mhm.
that gives, what, the amount of time needed to get in the paper advertised and
Yeah,
through council
yeah, that sounds good,
and get some feedback.
Well, you can always utilize knowledge and not officially be on the board, too.
absolutely.
Right, you could just show up and be helpful.
No, but then he might change his mind.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, right.
We want to rope them in and get it sucked in first, I get it. See how it is.
Well, do you want to just, like, tell us what a good timeline would be?
I'll
Like
let you
that's
know, I'm
not-
gonna look at the calendar, and what I'll do is I'll run it so that we can have it on council agenda, because it'd be the second Tuesday in November would be the soonest, so the Friday before that. So like, if you wanna look at from a practicality standpoint, like, I can put a date on that. If we would be, the deadline would be November 8th, so that we could, actually, we'd probably do it on, the deadline would be November 7th, so that, because the packet goes out on the 8th, and we could appoint with consent of council on the 12th.
That would be fine, that'd be good. I mean, we're supposed to meet on the 11th, so,
Well, and the answer is, those folks could come in and sit in as
mhm.
generic,
Mm-hmm.
as citizens
Yeah.
that night, too.
Yeah, that'd be great. You're gonna have it done, oh, okay, I guess, can you just tell us?
I just got, notified Tara when it's run, but it'll be,
Okay.
the deadline will be for approval by council on the 12th of December.
Okay, great, thank you. Cool, yay, awesome, that's wonderful. Okay,
Otherwise, it's gonna be January, because it is tradition to not have the 4th December meeting.
okay. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we got a little excited there, sidetracked.
Sorry.
We'll bug.
Okay,
I'm sure
so,
Joanne knows, so she can
okay, perfect,
pester her cohorts, yeah.
that's good. Okay, so then, we were on written correspondence, petitions from the audience, I don't think we had anything else there. Other business? Does anybody have any other business? I have two things. One is our next meeting, do we want to meet on the 11th, because that's Veterans Day? I'm fine with it, but if anybody else doesn't want to,
I'll make sure
Oh.
the room is open, so that's not a
Actually,
problem.
I'm supposed to be in Libby the next day, so I probably won't be here.
Hmm.
Libby, a little bit of a haul.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter, you guys can still meet without me. So the question that I'm asking you all is, do you want to meet on the 11th, or do you want to do a different day? 11th, is fine if I'm not here.
I'm good with either the 11th or the 18th.
I think the problem with the 18th, oh, it's a Monday. We need to make sure that it's not like the resort tax meeting rescheduled there, because the board, they tried to reschedule it tonight, and it's like, oh, that's not gonna work. That's
Oh,
two meetings in the same room, so. You said the 18th?
Yeah, I could do that.
Sustainability board meets at 4, so that probably wouldn't be a problem if you want to do it on the 18th. It would just be after that.
Is that good with you, Tara?
Yeah,
Just do that.
yeah.
18th?
Yeah, the 18th. Okay, so the next meeting we'll have November 18th. Great. And you that might work.
On the calendar.
Yay.
I'll remind them.
Awesome, okay. And then the other thing that I had was, I mean, this isn't really, what do you guys think about, you're on that listserv too, with getting all the emails about the legislature, they sound very worried.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and I just thought maybe it would be cool to have somebody to zoom in and just give us a little zip rundown.
cool.
So we
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, I'll see.
I don't know that worried is a valid number. We
Oh,
do have, but we do
they're-
have,
MITA and MMIA,
yeah, we
they
have,
are, like,
what's
red
the-
alert.
What do they call those people you pay to go lobbyists or whatever?
Mhm.
There's money set by them, people whose job it is to watch them breathe, so.
yeah, but it's been targeted the last several sessions, and they almost got it last year, and they just want to get it. That's what the head of MMIA, what's her name, the attorney?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, anyways, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find somebody, I don't know
Yeah,
who.
a lot of it's aimed at buildings. Buildings in the legislature never. get-
Kelly Lynch is who you're thinking?
Kelly Lynch, yeah.
Yeah.
Buildings they have a lot of money. They've got a couple of
Yeah.
TIF districts, 3, I think you're talking about a 4th one, but,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so, the dollar amounts have grown greatly. It used to be parcel money out, now it's much greater dollar amounts, and there's people that are lobbying it for
mm-hmm.
Were we gonna have a staff report too at the next meeting,
Oh,
or?
yeah.
Yeah, I can do that. I changed it to the 18th earlier. And by the way, you'd have additional meetings because now it's after the council meeting.
Okay, that's all we got then. So, any other business for the good of the order before we close her down?
Well, we talked about taking a look at the growth policy.
Yeah.
But you guys coming back with your feedback from it, have a
Yeah.
discussion based on
Homework.
everybody's homework.
Uh-huh. Will you send around a
I will send the link,
link?
That'd be great.
and maybe you can confirm that it's the latest and greatest.
Well, you can go to it from news and make sure that it's latest and greatest. It actually says
Okay.
it's the working draft, right, is the link.
It does
on
say
that.
working draft.
That's the one.
Okay.
It's only 72 pages.
Well, okay.
And there's pictures, it's fine.
Okay, well, I guess that's it. I guess we'll adjourn. Another question I always ask, do we need a motion?
Generally, you
Don't
do a
nod.
motion to adjourn. But having said that, somebody told me that if you've already completed every action item, it's
Then
no
you're done.
longer necessary.
It's always been that the board chair can adjourn.
Okay, I adjourn the meeting.
Because if the agenda's done,
The
then they
agenda's
can
done.
just adjourn it.
It just, that makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me too.
Doing a motion is just a lot of rigmarole.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we're done.
And we're done. Thanks, everybody. Yay. Thanks for
The
coming.
gavel.
Excited to have
I
you.
should tell you my back, a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's hear it.
No, we don't care, we just want you to.
We see that you